Perfect. My name is DJ. I'm a community designer and researcher of Uplift NC team, and I'm also teaching at NC State University. Can you introduce yourself, Kofi?
Sure. My name is Kofi Boone. I teach landscape architecture at NC State. I'm also a member of the Uplift team.
Okay. Well, let me share my screen.
All right. Well, perfect. Well, thank you for everybody that's here. We are going to spend some time today talking about placemaking. And the theme of it, as you can see from the title slide, is stories that make a place. We'll spend quite a bit of time talking about how to translate stories into things in the built environment that advance your goals with regards to tourism, economic development, sense of community.
Yeah, so I want to talk about what is place first. When we define somewhere, we can describe there with many things, such as blue sky, green woods, birds charming, or family camping, or market days. There are various things when we recall somewhere. It can be tangible or intangible. In other words, we can define somewhere as a destination or pass by with environmental characters or memories of doing something. This photo shows prairie for people riding a horse. We can feel the openness of nature, seeing mountain ridges, happy faces, slowly strolling horses, and peaceful grassland. If we describe the place, we can say what somewhere looks like, what kind of things we can do, see, or feel, and who can or could do that. These descriptions cannot be separated but related to each other. And when we relate the description of place with our daily life, we may speak to others about where we live, where we go, play, buy, or eat something at the place. Then we can recognize where is that place. We could categorize the place into few subjects. Although there are human creations or built environments on Earth where human lives, we can distinguish them by how much we develop. First, we can think more about human interaction and representation in the Main Street area. We can think about how buildings are located, what we can see while walking, or where we stop and do something in that place. On the other side, rural places or countryside area, we think more about relationship with nature, lesser human development or interactions than Main Street area. We can have different activities and experiences with cattle or farming. If we visit more natural areas or wilderness, we might have other experiences with nature. We can watch, hear, run, and climb, and many kinds of these exploration can happen in these areas. Whether in a busier area or a natural area, we can bring up the ideas of the meaning of place. What we can do or what we usually do cannot be detached from the particular area or environment. At the same time, we cannot draw an image of place without saying who is there. So we can say that place is not just an appearance or space, nor just about what people are doing, but place is a more meaningful concept that we can say is a culture that emerged from your roots.
There's lots of definitions for placemaking, but for the purposes of this webinar, we're going to offer this working definition that has some keywords that keep us honest as we're moving through the process. The goal is making public places that are accessible, vibrant, comfortable, and in the image of the communities they serve. We can talk about those words as we move further along, what it means to be accessible, both physically, but also in an inclusive manner so that people feel welcome and that they belong there. Vibrant in terms of the activities and the experiences that we want people to have, comfortable. And that's an important role that the built environment or the things that we can do through design and planning can assist with. And in the image of the community, which of course comes from deep engagement with communities. Three other keywords. People, you're going to hear that a lot through this presentation. That's the heart of this whole process. Because of the Uplift program expanding to experiences, what makes these places rich and what we really want to celebrate and protect and lift up. And the environments, that's where design and planning can play a key role in enabling people to focus and really benefit from those experiences. We think that placemaking is not a top-down process, it's a bottom-up and community-driven process. We think that community members are the keepers of local stories. They're the knowledge keepers. And so authentically engaging with them and collaborating with them is key. They are the experts of these places and environments. And community engaged. So really through collaborative work, the goal is to translate those local values into elements that can be planned and hopefully implemented. An example of that process in our own backyard, we've worked for many years with the South Park East Raleigh neighborhood in Raleigh, a mile and a half from our campus, helping them to translate their stories into interventions in the public environment to help to share the story, to build development growth, to help local communities have a voice. The South Park Heritage Walk, a self-guided walking tour through the community that helps people understand local history, was a key component to that. Part of that is archival research. So in all instances, we have to kind of do our homework and figure out why we are connected to these places and why they mean so much. In this example, this is a timeline that we generated with this community to honor the key people, events, and places in their history. Among other things, the home of Shaw University, which was the first historically Black college university in the state with a medical school, on to John Chavis Memorial Park, honoring the first African American teacher who was able to teach white and Black students, and to other iterations. But it was very important to get a sense of where we were before we were at the place we are now. And many ways of engaging. There are many ways to work with communities. Traditional workshops, which you all are probably familiar with, especially if you played a role in the Uplift program so far, where we meet and we convene in groups and we talk about our issues sort of face to face in conversation and discussion. Sometimes, in our case, going through the archives and finding artifacts and antiques and other elements that kind of speak to that history and local knowledge keepers interpreting those for us. In some cases, site discovery. So we believe that being out in the landscape is a really important spot. You get excited and you pay attention to things when you're physically there that you can't do when you're trying to recall it from a distance. So lots of site discovery. And also with that image, different generations. So not always the elders of the community, but also trying to excite young people to get them to understand the qualities of their place. And increasingly social media. So we're on Zoom right now as a part of the South Park Heritage Walk. We worked heavily with mobile devices, smartphones, and other tools that help us to document and share the stories of our places. And with regards to results, a lot of these oral histories and narratives were key to getting historic designation for John Chavis Memorial Park. It's now in the National Register of Historic Places. And those stories also informed the program for some of the things that you see there. Standing there with Chancellor Woodson under a public art piece that interprets some of that timeline history. That's an entry and a gateway feature into John Chavis Memorial Park. And on the right, the new Chavis Park Center, the first part of a two-part bond issue of really significant investment in this particular community to celebrate these stories.
So far, we have discussed the foundational concept of placemaking. Now we will delve more into a program blending. We define the place as what we do, with whom, and where. Program blending is about what we can do, what we are doing, or various activities and experiences from them. When we imagine what we can do in certain places, we might say many fun things like hiking, bird watching, camping, or eating delicious and authentic local foods. These activities can be described in more fundamental behaviors: seeing, listening, touching, playing, smell, eating. Once we come up with what we are doing or what we can do, describing activities collectively as a culture, we need to think about what led us to do that. These processes allow us to think about what is our asset or what do we have. When we answer what helps us to do a particular activity, we might say we have a beautiful mountain to enjoy the season, or a species not found in other areas. Many of these beautiful natural features can attract people to have experiences with them. Also, utilizing natural assets or being with nature brings local cultures. Harvesting or cooking, crafting, and cumulative cultures become a part of the place's history with time. Some of these assets already include activities, and some of them are environmental factors or nature. So when we imagine new or developing existing programs, firstly, we might need to know what it is or where it is.
An important part of it, specifically for this work, is an engagement process that uh, talks about asset mapping. So working with local people, collaborating on identifying where these places are, and that helps us to deal with subsequent steps. So this image is from a workshop, from if you may have participated in this uplift workshop, but in each of the regions, we invited people to get maps and stickers and talk about, natural and cultural assets in small groups. And this was a really critical step of allowing people and their neighbors to get a sense of all the wonderful things in their own backyard. And what we tried to do is translate those into a digital document. So this is an example of moving from that hand community driven process to more of a technical document that not only has those places identified, but starts to sort them and map them. And we think that that resource is really important as you start to think about ways of making connections, ways of investing, uh, dealing with trade offs of how to really tell the story of the places that are important to you.
After we figure out what we have, next step is making. Programming or program development, it is about making a salad. Like we put fresh ingredients all together in a bowl, we can utilize what we have or exist that help us to do some fun things. Or like a cultural asset, some of these assets already include activities, so we can easily put together with other assets we have. Then we might figure out something we want to put more or less. It is important to consider what kind of salad we are making. Making a salad is not the end. We do not just mix them at once. We probably care about balance and taste. This means it is directly related with placemaking in terms of accessibility, comfortability, and vibrance. Because the program provides activities and experiences, we'd like to talk about how to enhance those experiences. Using the salad metaphor, we would like to put our salad in a nice bowl, meaning appropriate environmental quality. And we consider where to put our salad on the table, meaning to boost experiences by networking with other programs. Environmental quality asks us if we want to have certain activities or experiences within there, and these concerns need to be more inclusive for diverse groups and communities. We can easily think about safety and cleanliness as a quality, like we do not want to put our salad in broken or dirty plates. I want to emphasize the network and scale. Programs or activities can synergize with other programs. It would be great to provide dynamic and various experiences within a single site or location. We may need to consider how to connect them to flow our journey. Planning a network in closer distance and further range can support enhancing travel experiences. Also, this series of transitions from one to another can bring more memorable moments. First, we can think about gathering the diverse experience within close distance or walkable sections. It is derived from physical or environmental constraints, so we may focus more on variety when we cluster the programs. For example, we can group the natural exploring activities as a single theme at the particular site. The next step will be connecting the several clusters. This These photos shows flows from the nature area to the town center area, including specific activities that could occur in certain area. When we connect these clusters, we need to think mobility with larger scale, how people can reach this destination. While we considered walkability or wayfinding for each cluster, we now need to consider the driving experience and how let people know it is there. You're muted, Kofi.
Sorry about that. Now that we thought about that in terms of how they fit together, some of the background ideas, placemaking in a way is about activating places. It's about taking the stories that you already have where you are and finding places to infuse those into places and help them enrich the experience and enriching environment. So we're going to talk about a few examples of activating places, seasonal activities, what we're calling pop-ups, which we'll describe, and then really taking those lessons learned from those sorts of things and investing them into permanent places, places that permanently hold those stories. Seasonal activities we're all really familiar with. So festivals that celebrate our heritage, the harvest, other celebrations. There are seasonal activities that are nature-based as well. Like there's the best time of year to see fall color, the best time of year to paddle on a river, the best time of year to experience a certain environment. So wildlife viewing, blueways, greenways, trails, and walks. Those are all opportunities to really celebrate and amplify place and activate them in a periodic kind of way. We have great examples in our own backyard in our state. So the Black Farm Tour, which emerged as a way to honor the Princeville homecoming in Edgecombe County, where hundreds of bikers from across the country come and experience local farms, local experiences and environments, and really celebrate that culture. And the Lumbee homecoming, we had a call this morning with a number of folks who are engaged with that, a huge gathering of people coming back to their home place in Pembroke and really celebrating local culture. So with this, we have lots of great local examples to pull from. And sometimes it's a different kind of experience. It doesn't always have to be full of people. It doesn't always have to be in the city. In this case, this is our experience paddling the Great Coharie River with the wonderful people there and experiencing the cathedral trees and really making a spiritual connection to something in the natural environment that a lot of us would not understand without interpretation. So another way of thinking about that activation by movement. Pop-ups become a really interesting opportunity with placemaking where the goal is to test out ideas before you invest permanent infrastructure and large budget and ticket items to a particular place to transform it. The goal is to do things that are relatively simple, that don't require a lot of technical expertise, that can be do it yourself or community build kind of situations that are relatively inexpensive. So it doesn't require heavy infrastructure and big changes and can be done relatively quickly. And so the goal is to, once you started to uncover these stories and develop this narrative, is to test these out in parts of your community just to see if those could grow up into a regularly occurring activity or a place. There's lots of tactics associated with them. So you may have seen this in many places, but often using color, using furniture that's movable, in some cases planting and then reusable things. So once the pop-up is over, those materials can be used for something else. This gives sort of a fast, inexpensive, and efficient way of testing out where people want to gather, how people move. Will it attract local businesses and activity? Are there things that you can sustain? If not, then you stop and you move to another issue. But if successful, these could grow up into permanent investments. So some examples from across the country, this in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, if you are in a small town or a community in North Carolina and you have a space that used to be an alley or a space between several buildings and you're trying to see whether or not that space could be animated, could be activated to attract restaurants, to attract shops and local businesses, to support local festivals, sort of these high impact, low cost elements that are just paint, movable furniture, and in this case, umbrellas providing instant transformation that you can use to observe, monitor how people activate, how to see it, how to use it, and whether or not it's something to permanently invest in terms of making a place. In this example in Fort Worth, Indiana, this incorporates not just a physical place for gathering, but movement. So, in some cases, some of our towns and some of our communities, it would be helpful if there were places where people could move freely on a bike or that they could walk. We may not have the infrastructure for that. There may be places at intersections that, because of how they're configured, uh, have a lot of extra space that could be reclaimed to become a gathering space and a setting for public art or for other elements. And so this is a more aggressive pop-up that introduces sort of a bike lane through paint and uses very simple movable activities to sort of celebrate the potential of what that corner could be. And in some cases, we learn those lessons and we say, hey, we've tried these smaller experiments, we've got enough information, we have a sense of how people are perceiving it, how effective it is, and sort of communicating the story of the place. And those could grow up into more permanent, long-term investments. Those could include public art, those could include markets in rural and wilderness areas, areas for camping and other kinds of outdoor activities, and of course movement. So the network was talked about earlier in the presentation: trails, streets, gardens, parks. There's a lot of places where you could start to make permanent investments after you started to see some results from pop-ups. A few examples in our own state. Lumberton has spent a lot of time thinking about this, and so the opportunity presented by a space between buildings on the main street became a beautiful mural anchored by public space, walking distance from the local theater, and is really being leveraged and used to catalyze redevelopment and revitalization in that downtown. Closer to where we're at here in Saxapahaw, the idea that ecological features can become associated with place. So the bowfin fish, a bony set of fish that are really specific to that particular part of the region, really celebrated in a spot you wouldn't expect it, a natural play area in the middle of the woods. So really using the fish as the inspiration for the play structure and really amplifying that through artistic means. In other parts of our region, this in Pittsburgh, the plant, which used to be a fuel development plant, not eliminating the infrastructure, not removing that industrial heritage at all, but since it's gone out of use, adapting the landscape around it to become a setting: tables, chairs, paving, lighting, attracting food trucks and other activities. So simultaneously, people are engaging in the things that they want to engage with, but they're doing it within the setting of what was once there. It's not erasing what was once there, it's using what was once there as a place to make identity. And in Durham, where I live. Not everything needs to be urban, not everything needs to be city. This is the Catawba Trail Farm, which is north of the city of Durham, which was a former plantation. The descendants of this particular plantation formed into a group that is now using that site to teach next generations about healthy relationships to the environment, food production and health, education, and of course history. So on the right is Stelfing Sellers, who leads the group, and they regularly have visitors and activities in a really rural setting in the woods. And lastly, back to Saxapahaw. So this one, the desire for people to put in boats and to paddle and to really enjoy the water resources that are there started informally, right, with people doing it on their own, but eventually became permanent infrastructure, but in keeping with the quality and the character of the landscape around it. So low impact developments, you can see the use of stone, the use of wood, things that don't dominate but fit into the environment around them and enabling these activities to continue and grow.
Now we may understand what the place means to us and what experience we want to have or provide, and how can we enhance those experiences. We want to discuss basic concept of how to design the environment. To remember what a place is, we can describe it with these three things: people, experiences, and environment. Like we cooked our salad and learned how to activate it and utilize some tactics on environmental change. We will check what environmental factors mean to us to understand how to choose the place and set up the table. Theoretically, we can recognize our surroundings with these five elements. We understand how the place looks like or feels like while we walk along the path. We may stop at the node where the paths intersect, or there is something big eye catchers far away. I want to show more examples with the conceptual maps. This is the map which describes the town center area. Brown boxes and circles means buildings, and green patches means parks, and lines with arrows indicate the road. Imagine we are in the Main Street area. We can recognize the biggest building or corner parks which differ from other buildings. Intersections for two main streets or activated intersection will be recognizable, maybe because we have another large building with dynamic patterns in building fronts. Additionally, the building fronts along the path or roads help us draw an image of the place. We may also remember all the alleys or spaces between the buildings because of surroundings or memories in there. Murals, furniture, colors, or signage, many of these smaller objects or as a group can notify us where we are. We might see countryside areas differently than busier area because we have less built environments. Brown circles and boxes mean buildings, and green patches can represent something natural area like woods or hills. Because we move faster by driving than walking on main streets, what we recognize while we move is something more significant or isolated. We may see a red barn far away or a large flower prairie. Sometimes we make eye contact with cows, and wooded area or hill become a landmark to define this place. While we consider building fronts or signage in the busier area, because most people pass by this area while driving, we might need more prominent signage as a landmark or planting tactics on longer and broader roadsides. We can also recognize a place inside natural areas, and the path, whether built or more natural, it may remind us of how we explore the woods or mountains. So the path, how we move along, node, where we might stop, and landmark, what we can easily recognize, can be various objects in different space, and those objects provide the sense of district or let us define where we are. Based on these environmental elements and what we have learned from previous slides, such as program development, we can ask ourselves these questions to start initial design process. How are people getting there? How do people know it is there? How can we encourage them to stay? We made a short animation to describe the basic concept of the design process. Let's say we are in the town center area. We may notify paths and intersections, and we can define our assets or opportunities with the park or vacant spaces. When we want to activate this place, we can think about vibrant images along the main street. We may use murals, colors, and lighting on building fronts. As we discuss accessible and comfortable places, we may be concerned about safety on crosswalks or bike lanes, so we might highlight them. We can also think about public transit, how to make it more recognizable, where to locate it. Not only buildings, but plantings can be a great move to activate the place. With more development, maybe we can extend the park, build safer crosswalks where we might have more human flows. These developments can be connected with activating vacant spaces. We can set up pop-ups for social gathering or such events. And recalling the program development strategies, you may need to consider how daytime and nighttime activities happen. These processes seem linear, but it is not always linear. When we think about what places, what it means to us, and how people, experiences, and the environments are related, we need to think again and again to consider accessibility, vibrancy, comfortability, and the community.
So, coming to the end, and we invite questions either when we get into discussion, or if you'd like to use the chat to list them to begin some discussion in the second half, to come all the way back to the beginning. Placemaking, it's about people, experience, and environment, and design and planning plays a key role in balancing all of those. Community is important because it's a community driven process. People in local communities are the keepers of the stories and really should be first in line to share those and collaborate with others to amplify them and give them form. Assets, we should all be mindful of the things that we'd like to highlight and share. And it's helpful to start to map those and share those to develop more advanced studies, processes, and activities. We want everything to be networked and connected where possible, and that's one of the hopeful outcomes of Uplift is through the multi-day itineraries, we build networks between all these wonderful things that you all are doing in all of your communities. And activation, we would like to encourage people to consider if you're not able to, because of resources or capacity, to invest in very expensive long-term strategies, is to test things out and consider the pop-ups and the DIY work as a way to study, to learn, to analyze, and make a case for more permanent investment later. And their resources. There are many that deal with placemaking, so we didn't invent this. This isn't necessarily new ground, but we would direct you to a few that have really helpful tools. And the presentation that will be uploaded to the Uplift website will have these links active. But Project for Public Spaces is well known, well regarded, has done work all over the world in various contexts, and have evidence-based strategies for how to engage people and how to bring activity to places that matter. Build a Better Block. There were a few examples that were shared from that group, but is more of, if you're interested in the do-it-yourself community build activities, to do things in a quick, efficient, and inexpensive manner, a very rich body of work. Partner with AARP too. So for communities that are dealing with those particular issues, they have a lot of great examples. Public Places, Public Stories is through the Mellon Foundation. The Mellon Foundation is putting $500 million into interpreting cultural and historic places around the country with an emphasis on being inclusive in that storytelling. So lots of examples from American Indian communities, African American, Hispanic, Latino, Asian American. So trying to make how we talk about places more inclusive so that everyone feels like they belong. And that concludes our part of the webinar. So we're happy to uh, get into any dialogue, discussion, or answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you.